Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, rather. And let me start by welcoming each and every one of you to this all-important training on climate change and conflict, strategies for mitigation and adaptation. Please, if your microphone is on, I would want to ask you to turn it off so that it does not distract others. We are actually starting like 5 minutes late. Mr. Pin Aji, can you just off your mic? Ajin Mohammed, the mic is on. Please turn it off. We are starting immediately. Climate change and conflict, strategies for mitigation and adaptation. Yes, very important training. We're starting a bit 5 minutes late. We just decided to wait for some of those who are going to still join us, but we are going to continue. It is, as you may already know, my name is Ambassador Dr. Abdul Wahid Edewale, and I am from the Institute for Crisis Resolution, Peacebuilding and Conciliation, ICRPC. Yes. Please, as you come on board, I want to ask all of us to put off your microphone so that you can listen to me, so that you can hear me clearly. The topic for today's training is climate change and conflict, strategies for mitigation and adaptation. It's a 2-day training starting from today. And the training itself contains 9 modules. 9 modules. Very important course. Climate change. Today we want to see how climate change is responsible for some of the different types of conflicts we have been witnessing in our society. We want to see the link, the nexus between climate change and conflicts. And we will also try to explore the strategies for mitigation of climate change and also adaptation. Now, like I said, this training is from the Institute for Crisis Resolution, Peacebuilding and Conciliation, in conjunction with the African College of Crisis Management and Peacebuilding. And we are going to be taking training. I will quickly have a rundown of the modules we intend to cover today. Like I said before, it has 9 modules. The training itself contains 9 modules. So we are going to treat 4 or 5 of these modules today, and most probably conclude the remaining part of the training by tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m. So module 1 of this training will be looking at introduction to climate change and conflict, under which we will be looking at we'll be looking at the basic concepts and terminologies of climate change. We will also look at the causes and consequences of climate change, in addition to the link between climate change and conflict, in addition to environmental stresses and resource scarcity. And of course, we will move to module 2, where we will look at climate change mitigation strategies. There we will discuss how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, meaning we will have to first of all understand what we mean by greenhouse gas emissions. We'll also look at renewable energy sources, in addition to looking at energy efficiency and conservation. We'll look at policy and governance. Yes, of course, we all know the importance of policy and governance in climate change mitigation and adaptation, under which we look at international agreements like the Paris Agreement and also national and local policies. We will also look at module 3, where we will discuss climate change adaptation strategies. Climate change adaptation strategies, under which we will look at adaptation in vulnerable communities. We'll look at building resilience in at-risk populations and also climate smart agriculture. We will also talk about infrastructure and technology, under which we will discuss disaster resilient infrastructure in addition to technological innovations. That will be all for Module 3. We will look at also Module 4, where we will talk about conflict prevention and early warning systems. That will involve identifying climate-related conflict risk, climate-related conflict risk, under which we look at risk assessment and analysis, early warning indicators, and also early warning systems, which will involve developing and implementing early warning systems and what have you. And of course, we will move to Module 5, where we will look at mediation and negotiation in climate-related conflicts. Mediation and negotiation in climate-related conflicts. We'll discuss all of that in detail. Under there, we will look at mediation techniques for environmental conflict. We will also talk about facilitating dialogue and consensus building and the role of third-party mediators. We will look at negotiation strategies, which will also involve interest-based negotiations and even multi-stakeholder negotiations. Because by tomorrow, we will be concluding the training where we will look at Module 6. We'll talk about the role of international organizations and NGOs, in climate change mitigation adaptation. And we'll also look at legal and ethical considerations, in addition to Module 8, where we will talk about developing climate conflict resilience plans. And of course, we will also talk about monitoring and evaluating climate conflict interventions. These are these are some of what we are going to be talking about as far as this training is concerned. So once again, I want to welcome you all to this all-important training on climate change and conflict strategies for mitigation and adaptation. Now, let us quickly go deeply. Let us start in full earnest. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, how well do you understand climate change? First of all, what do you mean by climate change? How do you differentiate climate change from weather? Sometimes people confuse the two. They look at climate change and they look at it as if it's the same thing as weather conditions. But of course, climate change is different because it is actually long-term in nature. Climate change has to do with, it is usually a shift, a variation, a long-term variation that happens within the atmospheric conditions of the Earth. When you see certain changes that are maybe 15 or 30 years, it happens like 15, 20 or 30 years time, and it affects, the atmospheric conditions. It affects precipitation patterns and even it shifts, temperature. So some of these changes are primarily because driven by human activities. When humans burn fossil fuels, when we do deforestation like cutting down of trees, and even industrial processes. When you say that there's industrial revolution and you have an industrialized countries, most of the industrialized countries are responsible for the kind of global, for the kind of climate change that we are seeing today because of the burning of fossil fuel. So we should understand that there are some basic concepts, there are some basic concepts and terminologies that is associated with climate change, and it is crucial for recognizing the impact to environmental, on the environment and the society. As some of us are just still coming on board, without taking much of our time, we will quickly be moving forward. I can see that we have a couple of people who are actually in the waiting room, but of course, we'll add each and every one. And we've been having some slight changes here, but very quickly, let me try to put up this window on the presentation format. I believe we are all seeing it right now in the presentation format. I believe this is very much better. Okay. will not be taking too much time today so that we can finish whatever we are doing and quickly go into, other activities for the day. So, still looking at an introduction to climate change. I have just given us a brief definition of what we mean by climate change, and we have looked at it that it is different from weather. Weather has to do with change in the atmosphere that happens within a very short time. It happens just the way you have dry season, you have rainy season. These are variations that happens, in very short periods of time. That is weather. Weather changes. It is different from climate change. Climate change refers to long-term shift in temperature, long-term shift in precipitation patterns, and even atmospheric conditions of the earth. So some of these shifts or changes are primarily driven by human activities, such as when you burn fossil fuels, when you do some kind of deforestation, and even industrial processes. So there are some key basic concepts and terminologies that is associated with climate change that we need to quickly understand. Some of these concepts include, the first one is called greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect. The second one is called carbon footprint. Another terminology is called global warming. The fourth one is called climate variability. These four key concepts and terminologies have to be properly understood. We have to look at them. What do we mean by the greenhouse effect? The greenhouse effect actually is the process by which greenhouse gases trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, leading to a warming effect. Let me suffice to say that, for example, we know that the Earth itself receives energy from sunlight. Now, when the sun actually, deposits energy on the Earth's surface, the Earth will definitely heat up. Please put off your microphone. Switch off your microphone as you are just coming. Mr. Buhari Aliu, your mic is on. Please put it off so that we can, continue what we are doing very quickly. Now, still understanding some of these mitigation, some of these key concepts and terminologies. I talked about greenhouse effects. We know naturally that the Earth actually receives energy from the sunlight. And now when this sunlight, when the Earth receives energy from the sun, the Earth will now heat up. The moment it heats up, it will now send back the energy it has received from the sun back into the air. We call that infrared radiation. It sends it back into the air, and of course, when it sends it back, there are some gases, greenhouse gases within the atmosphere that traps this heat that is supposed to go back. Once this heat cannot go back, it now stays in the air and it is trapped. Then it will now warm the earth. That becomes that is what we still talk about. We call the greenhouse effect. So take, for example, the earth itself is like a house, and a house that is enclosed. And of course, everything that is in that house needs to have, need to have an outlet where the energy can really be allowed to go out. Now, the earth itself being a greenhouse, definitely the gas that is emitted is called greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases, when they are trapped without allowing a space to go out, it becomes, it will now warm the earth. We will look at another concept we call carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gases that is emitted directly or indirectly by human activities. Please, I hope you are all hearing me loud and clear. If you can hear me very well, I need you to just indicate with a wave of hand so that I can be sure that we are all on the same page. Please indicate with a wave of hand if you are hearing me very loud and clear as we as we proceed. Yes, very good. I can see a lot of hands coming up. It means that we are all hearing me very loud and clear. Now, we are talking about key concepts and technologies of climate change. We've talked about the greenhouse effect, which is the process by which greenhouse gases are trapped, in the Earth's atmosphere, leading to a warming of the Earth. That means the energy that the Earth receives from the sunlight, whenever it wants to return them back into space, it gets trapped by the carbons and it gets trapped. And when it gets trapped in the air or in the atmosphere, it heats up the Earth. That is the greenhouse effect. Now, carbon footprint. Carbon footprint actually has to do with what? The total amount of greenhouse gases that gets emitted either directly or indirectly by human activities. When we burn fossil fuels, we are emitting a greenhouse gas. When we, even carbon dioxide that comes from the car you drive, that is a greenhouse. These are gases that get trapped in the air and ends up warming our Earth. So please take note of this. And of course, there's another aspect, another key concept we are going to talk about, which is called global warming. What is global warming? Of course, it has to do with the increase in average global temperature over time, primarily due to human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. The Earth, is actually being warmed by human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. So climate change is 80%, if not more, caused by human activities. So the climate and the global warming, situations we are seeing all over the world is caused mainly by human activities. That's why natural activities can cause a global warming, but the percentage of activities that causes global warming is usually very few, very limited, not more than 10 or 20%. But human-induced greenhouse gases is usually caused 80% by human activities. So that is what we mean by global warming. Then the fourth concept we are going to look at is climate variability. Climate variability. That is when you have climate variables, when you have some natural fluctuations in climate patterns over time. It includes seasonal changes and even long-term trends. Seasonal changes, long-term trends, call them climate variability. Now let us look at causes and consequences. What are the causes and consequences of climate change? Very, very important. Causes and consequences of climate change. That's some of the things we should quickly look at as we progress without taking much of our time. Now we are going to look at, we will start by looking at the causes. Natural causes are there, like I said. We have natural causes of climate change and we have the human factor, so the human causes of climate change. Now, looking at the natural causes first of all, there's what we call, when you have rising sea levels. Rising sea levels can be caused by melting polar ice caps. There are some ice caps that have been formed naturally, but when they begin to melt, there are some glaciers that begin to melt over time. They will contribute to sea level rise. And when there's high rising sea levels, it leads to coastal erosion, it leads to flooding, and it actually leads to displacement of communities. So one of the major causes of climate change is rising sea levels. And this rising sea level, like I said, is actually driven by melting polar ice caps and even glaciers. The second one is extreme weather events. Extreme weather events actually is one of the causes of climate change. When you have increased frequency and intensity of hurricanes, you have increased droughts, increased heat waves, and increased wildfires. All these can threaten lives, can threaten livelihoods, and even infrastructures. These are some of, still talking about the causes and consequences of climate change that happens in our society. It is very important and very key. So, and we are going to also trace it to what is happening even in our society today, we see a high level of, conflict that is driven by, climate change. Now we look at ecological disruption, which is another cause and consequence of climate change. Ecological disruption. What do we mean by ecological disruption? We are talking about shift in temperature and precipitation patterns, that tends to disrupt ecosystems. Some of them leads to, species extinction, loss of biodiversity, and even altered habitats. These are some of the things that we should take into consideration. And resource scarcity. Climate change also brings about resource scarcity. That is one of the causes and one of the consequences of climate change. Competition for dwindling resources such as water, arable land, and even food supplies can exacerbate existing social and political tensions, which can lead to conflict. So these are some of the things we need to understand, that as far as climate change is concerned, it has far-reaching consequences. We must not forget that climate change is one of the most pervasive threats to peace and security globally. Yes, please take note of that. Climate change, it is the biggest threat to peace and security worldwide, and it is, it is also a threat multiplier. Yes, that is what climate change does. It is a threat multiplier, and of course, let us look at the link between climate change and conflict. Somebody may want to know that what is the link between climate change and conflict? Why does climate change, how does climate change drive conflict? It is very simple, because we know that the relationship between climate change and conflict is complex and even multifaceted. Yes, it has multi-faces. Environmental resources, environmental stressors, and resource scarcity can actually result from climate change. And when it results from climate change, it will exacerbate existing social and even economic and political tensions, leading to conflict at various scales. From local disputes on water resources to regional conflicts over land rights and migration. So we must take note of this, or take this into consideration. This is the link between climate change and conflict. Most of us may not know that as it is, the current farmer header crisis we have in Nigeria is actually largely attributed to climate change. Because if you look at the level of forced migration that is happening from the north to the central, from north to the south, it is as a result of scarcity of water. The lake chart, which has been the major source of water for cattle areas in the north, has dried up. It has dried up to the extent that you do not have up to even 20% of that water available. This lake chart water was making water available to all the cattle areas within the lake chart region in the country. And when you have the lake chart drying up, there will now be scarcity of water, and the north being predominantly occupied by cattle rearers, there will definitely be need for forced migration. People will need to move to other areas where they can be able to find water for their cattle and even green pastures for the cattle. In the process of migrating, there will be trampling of farmlands, definitely. In moving in forced migration as a result of climate-driven scarcity of resources, the host communities will not take this lightly. While traveling, people will definitely trample on farmlands, and as they trample on farmland, definitely there will be conflict. That is one of the links between climate change and conflict, because the relationship is complex, and you can see how climate change can actually exacerbate conflict and how it can actually multiply the threats that comes as a result of conflict. So local disputes over water resources can actually be traced to those who are coming from other regions because of climate change. Now let's look at another aspect where we'll be talking about environmental stressors and resource scarcity. We know that, just like I've mentioned, water scarcity, food insecurity, displacement and migration, all these are the major stressors. All these are driven usually by climate change. When there's dwindling water resources, when due to droughts, when there's dwindling water supplies due to desertification, and when you have over extraction, it will exacerbate competition and conflict over water resources will occur. So we will have to take note of all of this. Dwindling water supplies due to droughts, due to desertification and over extraction, it will exacerbate competition and conflict over resources. When you also have changes in precipitation patterns and temperature extremes, it will affect agricultural productivity, and this will lead to food shortages and conflicts over land and food supplies. That is true. Now, displacement, because of rising sea levels, because of extreme weather events, and even environmental degradation, it will force communities to migrate in search of safer and more sustainable livelihoods. All this will lead to tensions and conflict over resources and territory. These are the major link between climate change and conflict. We can see how climate change stressors can stress environments and bring about reduced water supply due to droughts and desertification, which can actually exacerbate the competition and conflict will occur. We can see how changes in temperature patterns and extreme weather can affect agricultural productivity, which would, at the end of the day, lead to food insecurity and food shortages, and conflict over land and food supplies will come out. Will emerge. We can see how rising sea levels, even extreme weather events, and even environmental degradation can force communities to migrate in search of safer and more sustainable livelihoods, which will lead to tensions and conflict over resources and territory. These are some of the link, the nexus, how climate change can lead to conflict. Let us look at some case studies. I have mentioned the case study of the farmer header crisis in Nigeria. It is largely connected to climate change, because if the Lake Chad was revamped, if the Lake Chad was recharged, because the Lake Chad in Nigeria can actually be recharged. When water from other rivers, we have 7 rivers in Africa. Most of the water in each of these rivers can be drawn and extracted to refill the Lake Chad. If it is refilled and the Lake Chad itself is, if water is sent back into the Lake Chad, definitely there will be reduced migration. There will be no need for headers to be moving from one place to another. Be trampling on farmlands because of forced migration. Some of the case studies, like the Darfur conflict in the African region. Conflict in Darfur was caused because there was environmental degradation and even resource scarcity. And that actually exacerbated tensions between farmers and herders in Sudan. It is not only in Nigeria that climate change has been responsible for the conflict that is between farmers and herders. It happened in the Darfur region too, because it leads to violent conflict over land and water resources. Even if we move beyond Africa, the Syrian civil war was also attributed to climate change, because drought and agricultural failure that was driven by climate change actually contributed to social and economic instability in Syria. And that exacerbated pre-existing political tension and leading to civil unrest and even conflict. I still mentioned the Lake Chad case. Declining water levels in Lake Chad due to climate change have contributed to economic hardship and even social unrest in the region. So all these have actually fueled conflicts over scarce resources and conflict. So this takes us to the end of Module 1, where we have just successfully looked at understanding what we mean by climate change. For those of us who are just coming, we started Module 1 by looking at an introduction to climate change, looking at what we mean by climate change. We said that it is just the long-term shift in temperature, long-term variation, long-term shift in precipitation patterns, and even atmospheric conditions of the earth. And we said that this shift, long-term, it can either be 20, 30, 40 years, because it is long-term in nature. And we said it is different from weather events. So climate change is different from weather events, because weather events are usually short-term in nature. And that is why we have the dry season and the rainy season. These are, short-term reoccurrences. That is weather changes. But climate change is long-term in nature, and it is primarily driven by human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and even industrial processes. All these are activities that are carried out by humans. So that means climate change is mainly 80% caused by human activities. So we have understood that. We went as far as talking about some key concepts and terminologies of climate change, where we looked at rising sea levels. We talked about the greenhouse effect. We looked at carbon footprint. We talked about global warming, and we looked at climate variability. These are some of the key concepts and terminologies we have defined before you came. I want to believe you are all seeing the slides. Some of us are saying that they are not seeing the slides, but the slide is actually there for you to see. I've just moved it. So I want to believe we are all seeing it very clearly. So, and of course, as we proceed, I quickly want us to understand this very well. So we have also looked at causes and consequences of climate change, where we have looked at rising sea levels, we have looked at extreme weather events, we have talked about ecological disruption, and we have looked at resource scarcity. We also went further to look at the link between climate change and conflict, where we looked at water scarcity that can actually come as a result of droughts, unusual droughts, and sometimes unusual rainfall that can actually, and even desertification, and even over extraction. All this can lead to competition. And when there's competition for scarce resources, definitely what happens? Conflict will definitely arise. Food insecurity can also be driven by climate change because of changes in temperature patterns, which can affect agricultural productivity, and it can lead to food shortages, and conflict over land and food supplies can even arise. That is the link between climate change and conflict. We talked about displacement and migration. When you have rising sea levels, that leads to flood or leads to, forced migration, communities moving from one place to another. The host communities definitely feel as if they have unwanted guests, and that will lead to. So we have looked at case studies from the Darfur region, Darfur conflict. We have looked at another case study of Lake Chad Basin crisis, which is responsible for the farmer header crisis in Nigeria and other surrounding African countries that have been depending on water from the Lake Chad. And since climate change has dried up most of the water in the Lake Chad Basin, it is also responsible for the farmer header crisis, because that has brought about forced migration of the headers to other regions in search for water, in search for green pastures. And of course, as that happens, they will definitely have conflict with host communities. Module 2, let us look at Module 2. Here we want to talk about climate change mitigation strategies. Climate change mitigation strategies. So what it means is that climate change, with all its effects, with all its threats to peace and security globally, with all its consequences and effects, it can be mitigated. It can be mitigated. So we want to quickly look at mitigation strategies. What are the mitigation strategies for climate change? One is reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Yes, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? First of all, we should know that greenhouse gases are the primary drivers of climate change, and greenhouse gas actually contribute to global warming, contribute to the warming of the Earth's atmosphere, and even disruption of global climate patterns. So when you mitigate climate change, mitigating climate change actually requires concerted efforts, that is efforts by humans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across various sectors of the economy. So it is a conscious effort, a concerted effort by human beings, by humans, to reduce gas emissions, that are the primary drivers of climate change. And how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? It is one, using renewable energy sources. Using renewable energy sources. That is one aspect that we are going to quickly look at. Using renewable energy sources. Very, very important. Very, very important. As we proceed, please, I can see that some of us that's just coming, there will be no need for us to go back again. So one climate change mitigation strategy is the reduction of greenhouse gases, and it will involve the use of renewable energy. We can see how transitioning to renewable energy sources such as solar, such as wind, such as hydroelectric, and even geothermal power is essential for reducing what? Reliance on fossil fuels. Most countries of the world are actually making such migration, making such transition to solar, the use of wind and hydroelectric, and even geothermal power. If all these are climate change mitigation strategies that every country needs to adopt. Of course, it is an agreement that has been made for every country to take part in it. Then advancement in renewable energy technologies have made these sources increasingly cost effective. Then we'll look at another aspect of reducing greenhouse gas emissions is energy efficiency and conservation. When we improve energy efficiency in our buildings, energy efficiency in transportation, in industry, in agriculture, this is another critical strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Energy efficient technologies, energy saving practices, and even behavioral changes can help minimize energy consumption, while maximizing productivity and sustainability. These are, so the climate change mitigation strategies is a mindset. It is a behavioral and attitude change that is required, from humans to actually put this in place. Another aspect that we should consider in respect of climate change mitigation is the area of policy and governance. There must be effective climate change mitigation, which requires, robust policy frameworks and governance. When you develop strong policies and governance structures at the international, the national, and even local levels, governments, policymakers, and stakeholders have to play a crucial role in developing and implementing policies and regulations to address climate change. Yes, we have various laws, various policies, and various frameworks that are in effect today. Examples of these various, like for example, is the international agreements, like the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is an international cooperation and collaboration that is essential for addressing global challenges, such as climate change. Because this Paris Agreement was adopted in 2015, and I think over 200 countries aim to actually subscribe to it to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and pursue efforts to limit them. So the agreement must, set binding emissions reduction targets for participating countries and even encourages collective action to mitigate climate change. Yes, that is, I'm talking about an international agreement. Paris Agreement, it is part of climate change mitigation strategies put in place by humans. Then what about national and local policies? National and local governments play key roles in implementing climate change, because mitigation policies and initiatives that are tailored to specific contexts and priorities. It is unfortunate that in our country, our dear country, Nigeria, we are not, doing enough. Yes, we do not have, adequate national and local government policies and frameworks to mitigate climate change. and we are also having it. We have seen significant changes in the temperature of the Nigerian states of our society. It happens every day. We have seen how there have been changes in our kind of rainfall. We have seen the level of heat that have been, that we have experienced for the past couple of months. Very serious one. All these are impact of climate change. And what are the policy and governance mechanisms of the Nigerian government in mitigating climate change? We are not seeing them. So what we are trying to say here is that climate change mitigation strategies must have to do with reducing greenhouse gas emissions by citizens or by people using renewable energy sources. And of course, policy and governance too must be put in place to reduce climate change effects using, like, for example, the Paris Agreement, which is already on ground, and also national and local policies. That will take us to the end of Module 2, where we have just talked about climate change mitigation strategies. We have looked at the mitigation strategies today. We are going to have some kind of, open session where some of us can share our experiences. How you as an individual, how are you contributing to climate change mitigation in your area, or from where, in your own little way? How are you contributing to climate change mitigation? Now, let us quickly move to Module 3, where we will be looking at climate change adaptation strategies. Don't forget, this training is talking about climate change and conflict, strategies for mitigation and what? Adaptation. We have looked at climate change itself. We have talked about what it means. We have discussed an introduction and the key concepts and terminologies and the causes and consequences of climate change. We have looked at the link between climate change and conflict. We have discussed Module 2, where we have actually concentrated on climate change mitigation strategies. And we have now moved to Module 3. We are looking at what? Adaptation. Adaptation strategies. What do we mean by adaptation itself? And what are the strategies for adaptation? It's something that we quickly need to look into very, very clearly. As we progress, okay, we are almost done. There are still some people coming in. We need to move ahead without taking much of our time. Yes, adaptation strategies. What are the what do we mean by climate change adaptation? Because we know that climate change actually poses significant risks and challenges to vulnerable communities, particularly those in low-lying coastal areas and even regions, and small island states. Those that are living in small island states, those that are living around low-lying coastal areas, they are faced with high level of risk. Now, these communities often lack the resources and the infrastructure that is needed to cope with the impact of climate change, making adaptation strategies essential for building resilience and safeguarding the resources. Now, what we must quickly know here is that in Nigeria, we have a lot of communities that are living in highly vulnerable areas. And that is why we continuously see the level of flood that is reported on a yearly basis. Most of our communities are living in high and vulnerable areas. Now, how do we build resilience for at-risk populations? At-risk populations that are at risk. What kind of resilience can be built? Because adaptation efforts should actually prioritize building resilience in vulnerable communities. Communities that are vulnerable, there must be adaptation efforts that should be targeted at vulnerable communities. And that would actually involve what? Enhancing their capacity to withstand and recover from climate-related hazards. Most of us are living in various parts of Nigeria. We already know what it means to have, I mean, we already know what it means when you hear most people facing some kind of climate change situations. So what we should look at is some of the adaptation strategies are what? One, we should look at climate smart agriculture. Climate smart agriculture, because agriculture is particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. So when there's shift in precipitation patterns, when we have rising temperatures and extreme weather events, so climate smart agricultural practices is the only way to go. That is adaptation strategies, conservation farming, agroforestry, and even water efficient irrigation techniques. All these are climate adaptation strategies. It can help farmers to adapt to changing environmental conditions while promoting sustainable food production and livelihoods. So we should take note of all of this. We should take note of all of this. Climate smart agriculture. Most countries are already doing that. Most communities are already doing that. Then of course we have some infrastructure and technology, like building disaster resilient infrastructure. When you are building your structures, building a house, building a dam, or building bridges, they must be designed and constructed in a way that it can withstand climate-related hazards, such as floods. For those who are living within coastal areas, those who are living in small islands, their structures must be built such a way that it gives opportunity to withstand storms and floods and sea level rise, because all this will help in minimizing damage and disruption. This may involve incorporating climate risk assessment, engineering solutions, and even nature-based approaches. So what we are saying is adaptation strategies should involve using climate smart agriculture, building disaster resilient infrastructure, and also using technological innovations. We have some advancement in technology today that offers opportunities for developing innovative solutions to climate change adaptation challenges. There are some technologies, even AI is being used today. Yes, AI is being used to, to conflict or climate conflict monitoring and reporting. GIS, geographic information systems, predictive modeling can help to identify climate risk and can even monitor changes in environmental conditions and can also support decision making for adaptation planning and implementation. All these are adaptation strategies. Module 3 will talk about adaptation strategies, which is very, very important. And we may end up asking ourselves, we are going to discuss this at the interactive session after this training. What do you think your community is doing, or what kind of adaptation strategies do you have around you that you can actually tell us, and so that even other communities can learn from? We move ahead now to Module 4. Module 4, we will be looking at conflict prevention and early warning systems. Identifying climate-related conflict risk. One major way of adaptation is to actually do everything possible to see it coming, so that it does not take you unawares. Yes, that is another thing that we need to put into consideration. Should not take one unawares. So climate-related conflicts must be identified before they occur. Because climate change can exacerbate existing social, economic, and political tensions, and it can lead to increased risk of conflict over natural resources. So, and identifying and assessing this climate-related conflict risk is essential for effective conflict prevention and early intervention. What we are saying here is that in addition to knowing what we mean by climate change, in addition to understanding the key concepts and terminologies, in addition to understanding the nexus between climate and conflict, in addition to understanding the climate change mitigation strategies, in addition to also knowing adaptation strategies for climate change, we need to also identify climate-related conflict risk. Early identification will bring about early prevention and early intervention. And that has to do with what? Risk assessment and analysis. That is under module 4, where we are talking about conflict prevention and early warning systems. Risk assessment and analysis. Here we will be looking at conducting comprehensive risk assessment so that we can identify potential sources of conflict related to climate change. You know, when we know that there's going to be water scarcity, when we know upfront that there's going to be food insecurity, when we know that there's going to be displacement and even competition for resources, when we can analyze the root causes and the dynamics, and we can know the drivers of this conflict, then it can help to make us produce and create targeted interventions and preventive measures. Yes, that is the essence of climate prevention and early warning systems. It is the reason why we do risk assessment and analysis. Even in conflict management, what are the major reasons for conflict analysis? You analyze conflict by breaking down the conflict to understand the conflict patterns, to understand the conflict nature and the conflict actors and the conflict drivers, so that you can be able to develop strategies that will prevent the conflict from occurring and even to be able to intervene early enough. The same thing is related here. Risk assessment and analysis, looking at climate-related risk, climate-induced risk assessment and analysis. Very, very important. We have to do that, and that will involve developing early warning indicators and monitoring systems so that we can detect signs of escalating tensions or emerging conflict that is related to climate change. These indicators may include changes in resource availability, social unrest, and even displacement patterns and intergroup tensions. All this will signal the need for timely intervention and response. You will agree with me that timely intervention, timely mitigation efforts, and timely response is a product of early warning risk assessment and analysis. Yes. So in conflict prevention and early warning systems, that is identifying conflict that is related to climate, we must definitely do risk assessment and analysis. And when we do that, makes it possible for us to attend to climate related conflicts on time. Now we have various, in fact there are very many, AI tools that can be used today to identify early warning indicators of climate-related risk. Yes, because when you establish effective early warning systems, which is very critical for providing timely information and alerts, all these ones that we see today in Nigeria, we have received various alerts from practitioners, communities, and even policymakers of risk of climate-related conflicts. We have seen where people have been asked to move from their current location to another location because because risk assessment and analysis have shown that there is going to be floods in specific areas. But what we have always seen in Nigeria is the refusal of people to move or to relocate, even when they have been told that there is going to be some kind of flood within their areas. Most times it is as a result of the fact that people do not have where to go to, where to even move to, when they have been told that there's going to be conflict. There's going to be flood within their region or within where they are staying. So building resilience in vulnerable communities is essential. And this resilience, adaptation strategies is not far from what we have just talked about. So in conflict prevention and early warning systems, that means conflicts that are related to climate change. We must actually identify what these climate-related conflict risks. We have mentioned them. We have talked about risk assessment and analysis. We have looked at the early warning indicators, early warning systems that must be put in place, and even developing and implementing them. We have a case study that we are going to look at the end of this training. We will take our final module for today, That is module 5. And module 5 will be looking at mediation and negotiation in climate-related conflicts. Don't forget that since climate change is the biggest threat to peace and security, that means climate change can lead to conflict and has been leading to various types of conflict. Then, if the conflict happens, the moment we are not able to identify these conflicts or this climate-related conflict before they occur, when they do occur, we are going to still use mediation and negotiation to address these same climate-related conflicts. So please, if your mic is up, please, you ask you to put it off so that you can listen to us as we move. Now we are looking at the last one, mediation techniques for environmental conflict. We should know as climate experts that mediation plays a critical role in resolving environmental conflicts, especially the one that arises from climate change impacts. Mediators can facilitate dialogue, they can facilitate, they can even foster collaboration and even help parties find mutually acceptable solutions to complex environmental disputes. What that means is that mediators can facilitate dialogue and consensus building. Yes, take note of that. And mediators actually play the role of third-party facilitators. Yes, because they are neutrals and they play the role of guiding parties to achieving, an agreeable solution that will, bring an end to the conflict in question. Now, what are the negotiation strategies we should look at? There is interest-based negotiation and there's also multi-stakeholder negotiation. Of course, we know that negotiation is different from mediation. Mediation is quite different from negotiation. These are two of them are conflict resolution tools. But the difference between negotiation and mediation is the emergence of a third party. When there's a third party that facilitates agreements between two people, that becomes mediation. Okay? And when there is no third party between two people in facilitating resolution of conflict, that we call it negotiation. So the striking difference between negotiation and mediation is the absence of a third party in a negotiation process and the presence of a third party in a mediation process. These are two major conflict resolution techniques that can be used to resolve environmental conflict that is necessitated or that was driven by climate change. So these are some of the things that we need to put into consideration very, very clearly. And as it is, I will be opening the floor very soon for us to have some kind of interactive session in respect of climate change mitigation. And we are going to do this very orderly, meaning that if you have a contribution or a question, you will just indicate by raising your hands and I will appoint you to speak. We may actually look at real-world examples of successful early warning systems for climate-related conflicts. So you can even highlight best practices. You can talk about lessons learned. You can even look at key success factors. You can even look at examples from different regions and sectors. You can talk about demonstrating the effectiveness of early warning mechanisms in preventing and mitigating conflict. You can also look at various case studies that have happened within Nigeria and also within the African continent. So at this juncture, we have looked at module 1 to 5 of this particular training on climate change and conflict and also mitigation and adaptation strategies. So from now on, for the next 30 minutes before we shut down the training for today, let us have your contributions, your questions on this particular aspect that we have discussed. Like I said, the entire training is it's 9 modules. We are going to treat 5 modules today, which we have just treated, and we'll look at the remaining 4 modules by tomorrow to conclude the training. So please, the floor is open. If you have questions or suggestions, let me have your hand up. You will unmute yourself and speak, and after you are done speaking, you will now have to put your microphone off again. Then the first hand I have here is Mr. Mbode Muta. Please, Mr. Mbode Muta, you have the floor. Make it brief and short. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. I don't know if I'm audible enough.
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so thank you very much for the session, such an insightful session. While we talk about one of the ways of reducing the greenhouse gas emission, which is the subscription to solar as a transition to clean energy. I have two questions that's related to Nigeria. Number one, we saw a lot of situation. Just of recent, I think there's a new tax law regarding installation of solar, which is coming up in the nation.
So, can you speak a bit louder?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, better now.
Yes, I said regarding the reduction of greenhouse gas emission, that's a movement to clean energy. Right now, there is coming up of a new tax law regarding solar installation in the country, Nigeria. So, what is how do the common man cope with that? Which is one. Then second question is there any way of is there any way that the nation or any way of just transition whereby as we are trying to move to solar in the country where there is going to be a justice, that's a just transition. So I don't know if you're able to get my question.
Yes, somehow. Okay. Your question is, I think it's partly clear. The second aspect is what I don't get very well. Maybe you can rephrase and maybe explain further.
Okay, the second part I'm talking about, how do we ensure just transition in Nigeria?
Just transition?
Yes. Yes, okay. As we are advocating to subscribe to solar.
What do you mean by just transition?
That is just transition. That is ability to, as the electricity, the power, and everything. There are people there. So as we advocate for people to move from that aspect to solar, that's clean energy, there are people that will also lose their jobs. So how do we make sure that they are also inclusive, so that the transition from the normal energy to solar will not affect others, that they will lose their job? That's a just transition.
Okay. Now let me quickly answer you the way I understand the question. Looking at the tax law, I am still trying to find out where it, because I'm just even hearing this in respect of tax law on the use of solar. I don't know how true that is, but if at all that is the case, then it is very unfortunate, because most countries that are putting in tremendous efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to mitigate climate change consequences, and to mitigate climate change consequences, they are doing everything possible by providing incentives to transit to renewable energy and the use of solar. They are even making it very cheap and making it very accessible, so that people can be easily motivated to move towards the use of reducing gas emissions and the use of green air. So putting any form of tax on it is going to be a disservice. It is going to be counterproductive, And I know that in as much as we have said it, that it is very important for policy and government frameworks to be put in place in order to promote the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and promote climate change mitigation. it will be a disservice. In fact, it will be counterproductive completely to come up with policies that will inhibit or reduce people's ability to transit successfully to renewable energy sources, such as solar. Last week, I was in Addis Ababa for like a week, and I was surprised to see that 60% of the cars they are using in Addis Ababa are electric vehicles. All the taxis, in fact, more than 90% of the taxis that they carry around the town or the country are electric vehicles. So you now see that there is less, in fact, there's high reduction of carbon. The air you breathe within the environment is very clean air because you don't see carbon that comes out from the cars and all that they are driving. These are because the government of that particular country have made a transition into renewable energy sources to be very, very attractive and easy for the citizens. That is what Nigeria is supposed to be doing. Like this solar energy we are talking about now, the use of solar and the solar panels to generate electricity and what have you. At this point in time, it is supposed to be so cheap that even with as low as 100,000 naira, you should be able to have solar in your house. Since we have been able to, we have not been able to give us 24 hours light, then solar energy should have been the best way to go. And by this time, the government should have come up with various policies and frameworks that would have made. Listen, I wonder why we are a particular. I wonder why we are a peculiar country in respect of almost everything we are doing. You see other African nations taking various steps, making concerted efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But here in Nigeria, we are more interested in politics, more interested in winning elections and rising to power, without doing any other thing to domesticate some of the Paris agreements that we are subscribers to. That has to do with. So it's it's really unfortunate here, and that is where we have even said. How many climate change frameworks do we even have in Nigeria, apart from the national climate, the national Commission for Climate Change? Most people do not even know that they exist, because nothing is being done, and what have you. Our government have actually succeeded in installing solar panels in the Aso Rock, and they have used they have used public funds. So why can't they even use these same public funds to subsidize solar panels, subsidize solar electricity for the population? It will actually drive industrialization. It will drive businesses. It will move small scale enterprises. But I wonder why we are not looking towards these angles or these areas. It is unfortunate, the transition that you are talking about, so that jobs will not be lost. Even jobs are lost, jobs will still be made available in other areas, because the transition will open the economy. It will open jobs. It will open a lot of people can be able to do businesses. We all know the amount of we all know the amount of backwardness that we are facing as a result of a lack of electricity to power our businesses. So a lot of small scale businesses will spring up, and small scale businesses will move to the next level if we have just constant power supply, just constant power supply, which is one of the. So I want to believe that we are in this together, Mr. Muta, in ensuring that we keep the advocacy on the high, and we continue to advocate for climate change mitigation strategies and adaptation strategies. Even in the same Addis Ababa that I went to, where I saw that buildings were being they were building their structures even with disaster resilience in mind. That means they are building structures that can withstand even climate-related hazards like floods, like even storms. So it is not just even the solar energy that we're talking about. And I discovered that even in that very country, we don't have rubber. We don't have bottled water in rubber containers. You don't have. I didn't see anything like even leather. that maybe you buy something, they package it in a leather for you. No, I didn't see that. Or you buy bottled water and the water is packaged in a rubber container. There's nothing like that. Their bottled water is in a bottle, breakable bottle, like the way you buy Coke in bottles. That is how you buy their water. By the time you finish drinking the water, you return the bottle. If you cannot return the bottle, you drop it somewhere in your house. Tomorrow, some people will come and pick the bottle from you. The bottle will be sterilized, washed, and everything, and they will use it to produce another water and sell. So all these rubber containers and what have you, you don't see them around. You know, these are all smart. Biodiversity. Smart cities that they are trying to build. So these are some of the things that we should be putting into consideration here. And that is why there is need for climate change mitigation, for climate change advocacy to continue in Nigeria. So thank you very much. Do we have another hand? I think I can see Mr. Who is that?
Yes, it's me, Ibrahim.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I have two concerns. One, when you talk of climate smart agriculture, I believe in climate smart agriculture, but must climate smart agriculture advocate for the use of GMO, or can we just stick to the natural seeds that we have? And then the second issue is, sir, what do you think will be the role of government creating cattle range as a process of mitigating climate-related crises? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, we are not subscribers to the GMOs or the use of GMOs. We've always known that organic agriculture is the best. Organic agriculture is even a climate change mitigation strategy. Yes, when you do organic agriculture, you are contributing to climate change. It is also part of climate smart agriculture. But by the time you begin to do GMOs, you begin to use fertilizers and what have you. Fertilizers and what have you are contributors to climate change. These are not climate mitigation strategies. So organic agriculture is the way to go. That is it. Then talking about the ranch is also another very important aspect. When you have these ranches, we have been advocating for this over time. There will be reduction in all this migration. There will be reduction in a trampling of farmlands because of migrating from one region to the next. And when you are migrating and trampling for farmland, definitely conflict will arise. So, but when you have ranching, cattle are located in specific designations, and water and green pastures and everything can be made available to them from other places. And this will definitely go a long way to reduce the farmer header crisis that are climate induced. So ranching, to a very large extent, can also be considered as a climate change mitigation strategy. Yes. So please take note of that. Thank you very much for that observation. I think the next person we have, we have a guy.
Okay, sir.
Go ahead, or you're not speaking?
My hand is also up, sir.
Okay, who is that? Okay, Dr. Obolale. Okay,
yes,
please
sir.
go ahead. Go ahead,
Thanks
madam.
for the opportunity. The topic is highly loaded, but my question is very simple, but it's also loaded. How do we address the impact of climate change on national security? Thank you.
Okay, very good. If you have been with us from this, from the beginning of this training, this is the essence of this particular course, this particular training. To address the impact of climate change on national security is to actually look at climate change mitigation strategies. Because when you mitigate the effect of climate change, it will have a multiplier effect on national security. Because when we say that climate change is one of the most pervading threats to global peace, national, both community peace, it is a threat to community peace, threat to local government peace, national peace, and even global peace. That is climate change. But when you now begin to put in climate change mitigation, or you are putting some frameworks and policies in place to mitigate and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you are mitigating the effect of climate change. And once you do that, you are definitely trying to ensure that national security is completely intact. Yes, because if climate change is not checked, if the effect of climate change is not checked, it will affect national security. But if the effect of climate change is properly checked through the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by transiting to renewable energy sources as solar, wind, hydroelectric, and geothermal power, which will now reduce our reliance on fossil fuel, and it will lower gas emission, and we now use some climate change mitigation strategies like, energy efficient conservation, the use of, climate, eco-friendly agriculture, smart agriculture, government on their own too, coming up with effective mitigation policy frameworks, and structures, adhering to the Paris Agreement, which is the international, and also looking at national and local government, roles, implementing climate change mitigation policies and initiatives into our national priorities and national developmental goals. What happens? Then national security will be intact. Then that means we will not have any threat to our national security. So that is the real essence of climate change mitigation and adaptation, so that we can reduce the threat that it poses to peace and security. I think that explains it. Yes. So that is that we must put into consideration. I don't know, Dr. Bolanle, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. We have also Madam Dr. Abigail Stanley. These are fellows of ICRPC. So, and these are climate change and conflict resolution experts. So, Madam, you have the floor. Dr. Abigail, you have the floor. Are you there? Okay. Then we have Madam Memuna Yakasai.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Good evening now. Well done, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for this educative session. I have two questions to ask.
Okay.
My first question is on risk assessment. If, for instance, after a risk assessment has been conducted on a particular area and they found that people living in that place are vulnerable to certain climate change in the society,
Climate related risk
to the people living in that particular area, because presently, if people are finding it very difficult to have a shelter, and maybe after the risk assessment, what do you think those people can do in order to save their lives? Secondly, is there any working policy, or what effort is the government making after any risk assessment in order to support the people that are vulnerable to any climate change, so as to prevent or mitigate climate change based conflict?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very well. If you ask the federal government now, they will tell you that they are doing a lot. But you and I know that they are not doing enough as far as I'm concerned. We have the NCCC. Is it not, what do you call it? I think it is a parasita under Ministry of Environment. That is the National Climate Change Committee or something like that. Under Ministry of Environment. All these people have the responsibility to ensure that climate change is properly, the effect of climate change is properly mitigated, and also they are also to bring some climate change adaptation strategies. Now, as Nigerians have always been left to cater for themselves, almost in every aspect of our national existence as human beings, we have seen how floods have actually usually been dealing with people from year in, year out. We have seen how risk assessment is being carried out, and climate-related conflict risks have been identified, and at the end of the day, people are giving the heads up to move, and the people don't get to move. That is even the factor, because when the risk assessment and analysis is done, and we identify climate-related conflict risk in that area, people are usually advised, please, can you relocate? But most times, other saner societies, when you're asking people to relocate, they provide alternative relocation destination for people. Exactly. Because people cannot relocate to nowhere. And when the government, is the responsibility of the government, security of lives and property is the primary responsibility of the government. So if people have been asked to relocate as a result of identification of a particular climate-related conflict risk, then they should be given an alternative relocation spot or relocation destination. Not when people are suffering, they don't have money to even take care of themselves, they're asking them to relocate without. So the government's responsibility to cushion the effect of relocation and adaptation strategies is very poor. It's actually unfortunate. We have seen how that most of our leaders are so irresponsible. I'm sorry to say, but that is exactly what it is. We all know the situation. Every year, the same flood that destroys people's lives and property happens every year. So there are people who are just there, they are just adapting in their own way. People have built some kind of adaptation strategies and resilience on their own. So you see some people, because they have lived in a particular area for a long time, and they have faced various flood activities within that area. They have gone to the extent of building their houses on top of trees, so that when the time comes, the flood will not reach them. Those are adaptation strategies, self-help, that they are also, doing. Some other people have actually gone to the extent of when they get to that particular point where there will be flood, they will remove like 80% of their properties from their houses and go and keep somewhere else, so that when the flood comes, they will stay. Some have even built some small canoe, and keep it by the side, so that when the flood comes, they will use the canoe to maneuver and go to the next street and even go to the market and come back. Those are adaptation strategies. They will paddle canoe and even be doing a small town service and be carrying people and be collecting small change on canoes. Navigating their way on waterways on floods that they have, because of over time, they have been able to build such resilience. So adaptation strategies is what people are doing. People in Nigeria are no longer waiting for the government, because that is, and we are also advocating for the rise of NGOs, to come up and fill in these gaps, of doing climate change advocacy. Most of the NGOs we have are talking about child protection, drug abuse. But we have less NGOs, smaller quantity of them who are actually in the area of climate change advocacy. And there is need for some of us who are peace practitioners to even begin to look at those areas and set up small NGOs in that area, because even we have international funders and donors who are willing to and who are ready to even fund climate change initiatives that will come from NGOs that is set up by you and that people like you and I. So in this case, the only thing we can say is that we as peace practitioners should keep the advocacy up. We should continue, and we should keep asking the government for accountability, and also contributing our own quota also in ensuring that we build a more adaptive and resilient society. Thank you very much. I want to believe that has touched it a little.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Then
thank you so much.
Yes. Then of course, there's Garba Kigwashi. Your hand is still up, but you are not speaking. If you want to speak, you are also free. Then there's who again? We still have Madam, Dr. Abigail Stanley. Your hand is still up. If you have something to say, you still have the floor to speak. And do we still have another hand like that of Garuba? Okay, that's Garuba Kigwashi. Okay, I think you have spoken. Do we still have other contributors before we shut down the training?
Can you unmute me, sir? Can you unmute me? Okay, I can hear you, sir.
You're already with us here now.
I have two systems on. Oh dear.
You better off the two of them.
Let me okay, let me okay, I've off one.
Okay, that's Dr. Abigail Stanley, right?
Yes, sir.
Please off one and then you can now speak.
Okay. Okay.
It's echoing.
Let me. Okay.
So?
Okay, can you hear me, sir? Let me come off this one. I don't even know how to come off.
Waiting for you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Very loud and clear.
Something is wrong.
Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, sir?
Speak
Hello?
now, madam.
Okay,
We are hearing you.
All right. Okay.
Please, we cannot hear. Everything is silent. I'm not hearing. I don't know if it is my.
I'm going to talk about my state government. I'm from Cross River State, and for a long while we had massive deforestation, and this kind of these builders were coming in to, cut down all the palm trees, all the rubber trees for building massive housing estates, and then a lot of timber cutting. So that was affecting, the greenhouse.
Please, I cannot hear anything any longer. Is it from my side or is it all over, please? I want to. I just cannot just be staying without hearing anything.
Oh, okay. You can't hear me.
I can
Hello?
hear you loud and clear.
Okay. All right. So what the state government did now, there's a policy stopping any tree cutting. Before you cut, even if that tree is in your house, you have to get permission. They will come and inspect before they allow you to cut. Because the whole area, if you travel down to Cross River now, left, right, everywhere is down. All the trees are down. A lot of timbers were being cutted out, by private individuals. Then a lot of developers were coming in, cutting down all the plantation. And this exposed, and caused a great deal of greenhouse effects. But now, this policy is now in place. You can't cut any tree without government coming to inspect and giving approval. So they are mitigating that. That's my little contribution.
Okay, that's a very good one. Very good one. That is what we are talking about. Ensuring that there is climate change mitigation. We have some communities that are making it compulsory for people to plant trees.
Yes.
People to plant trees. That is, we call it afforestation.
Yes.
So afforestation is a climate mitigation strategy, which can be adopted anywhere. And so I think that's a very good one. I believe that if other states can emulate that of the Cross River State,
yes,
we will be making some kind of progress and we'll be heading somewhere. So I think I still have other hands that are up. Mr. Zara Jauru, you have the floor.
Good evening. I'm not a mister.
Okay. Good evening, madam.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So you've touched on some of my contributions about advocacy, but I'll still like to say that it's very important that people in government or government, both executive and policy makers, would have to be aware and consciously mainstream climate change issues and environmental issues into all decision making, or else we won't go anywhere. Everybody is making his contribution in silos. It might be confusing, it might not yield anything much. So I think we should work on that. And how can we do that? I think we also need synergy among all stakeholders, whether in government, NGOs, or individuals who have this climate change issue at heart. And there's nothing wrong, I think, if you drive that process for synergy to map out those who are connected or who are practitioners also in one way or the other. Like we have people in conservation, we have the forestry, we have the national parks, and all those people who can be mobilized to strategize on a plan of how to ensure that what you have suggested here can be implemented. If not, implementation will be kind of not possible. And then I think while that is being done, we must find a way to influence review of curriculum in schools, from the least, from even nursery school up to the university, to include environmental awareness, climate change as part of their curriculum, so that they grow up with it. If they grow up with it, we won't come and be struggling with them if they become leaders, because they will already be conscious. And then what is the role of AI? How does AI that is like coming into play, how do we deploy it into this mitigations, analysis, and everything we need to do pertaining to climate change, and then mitigating conflicts and all other negative impacts of climate change? Thank you, and over.
Very much. Thank you very much. Very beautiful and fantastic contribution. You know, we are in the age of technology, and of course, AI can be integrated into every aspect of life. You know, so AI too can be integrated into climate change and mitigation. I was talking about geosensing the other time. In fact, during the I think I just concluded module 5, where we were talking module 4, where we talked about identifying climate-related conflict risk, and in that I also talked about risk assessment analysis, which involves conducting comprehensive risk assessment so that we can identify potential sources of conflict related to climate change. You know, some of these conflicts, such as water scarcity, food insecurity, even displacement and competition for resources, and of course, early warning indicators, to also develop early warning indicators and monitoring systems, that will detect signs of escalating tensions and even emerging conflicts that are related to climate change. AI can do everything I just talked about now. Yes, even to establish early warning systems, that are critical for providing timely information and alerts to policymakers and even practitioners. AI can be used to do all of this. Even when we want to develop and implement early warning systems, AI can be used to do all of them. Because you can use AI even in the banking sector, you can use AI in the medical field, you can use AI in conflict analysis, conflict prevention, and even conflict monitoring and reporting. You can use AI to do all of them. That is the future of conflict management. So, and I think the next time we are going to have this training, we are going to have a training that we are going to call it AI-based climate change and conflict mitigation. We are going to have integrate the use of AI in how, so that we can also know how to use AI systems to monitor and assess risks that are associated with conflict. So thank you very much, madam. I think there's another hand that is up, and that is Mr. Chukwudi Michael. You are also free to speak now. You have the floor. Mr. Chukwudi.
Thank you, my good friend. I'm Professor Chukwudi Michael.
Oh, Prof.
I've enjoyed all your talk and presentation. I'm a professor of agronomy and wood science. Actually, climate smart dimension is one key aspect of interest. But I want us to think beyond our, let me say, national government restricted limitations. You know, a good number of times people talk governments are not doing this, they are not doing that. And that is very, very correct and unfortunate. But I want us to think in 3 dimensions, especially for bodies like yours, a research institute. I actually want to emphasize 3 things that could help our people while the government does whatever they can do at the time they want to do it and in the way they propose to get such done. One is the issue of research. The type of research in climate studies that is being recorded today is not very reliable and authentic. How do I mean? Scientists come in to do 1 or 2 things without involving the people. So I want to advocate for participatory action research in anything that have to do with climate change. We are going to get the best of output from such research. That is the first thing I want to advocate if we are going to help our people. Let's leave the government aside. When the government wakes up, fine, that will be okay. So number 1 is the nature of the research we conduct. And some of those research is beyond and outside sometimes the way the people, the indigenous persons perceive their situation. That is number 1. Number 2 is the galvanizing of indigenous knowledge system. You see, the people, you have given a number of examples, people building on top of the trees and things like that. Some of those things need to be galvanized and organized by bodies like yours or related institutes. And those things now made available to farmers using various outlets. We have social media, fine. A department can be created in your institute that will flood the social media space with some of this knowledge. A leaflet can be produced, and not only that, all these radio, television programs, you can allocate. I'm sure some of you guys have some funds that can do that regularly. When you do that regularly, whether at local level, but preferably at national level, how many times do you see issues on climate change, per week, for instance? It is what people hear often, that is what they tend to think about. So I think some of the research institute like yours, should spend some money to change the mindset of our people. The radio, the television, just clips, let them see more frequently than we are doing at the moment. You will see that they will be able to at least get some senses that will make them not to be victim of a situation. Now, if some of these indigenous knowledge facts from various places are garnered together, and then you are releasing them in a very special program, I can assure you that you will have the livelihood of average individuals and families in sub-Saharan Africa beyond Nigeria. There are countries that are worse than Nigeria. So I am thinking that if you do something like that, it's going to help. Lastly, I will talk on issue of networking. Now, you are just one institute, and there are several of such. How are you being coordinated? Can't you influence a friend or people that have goodwill in other institutes so that you come together? You have a lot share responsibility. You can bring a chain of events. Okay, we want this research institute to take day 1 or week 1, depending on the number, so that Nigeria can hear about climate-related matter and survivability on almost every day or every week. With that, you will be able to change the psyche of our people, and then you will also make them an extension of advocates for this mitigation on climate change challenges. So these are the 3 things I just want to talk about. Just research, let's make it participatory. Number 2, let the IKS, the indigenous knowledge system, be put together and then be communicated. Then number 3, networking among bodies like you that can help the system, so that even if you say you don't have much money, by the time you have 20 or 30, let us not wait for NGOs. Let us start somewhere. And the impact and the multiplier effect will be felt across board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But what a very wonderful contribution you have just made. In fact, you have just spoken some of the things that we are actually doing already, but you know, it is still not just enough. That is just the truth. You know, Nigeria is quite big. You can even, this climate change training we are even doing now, we have done this same training. I think this is like the 12th batch of this very training. And some of us are just coming in contact with the institute or even coming in contact with this training for the first time. But it's no matter how it is, your contribution is duly noted. We are doing things, we are putting things in place on our own to actually do some of the things you have mentioned. It's a very good contribution you have made. I will also reach out to you, sir, after this training, so that we can also work with partners, with people like you as partners to contribute your wealth of knowledge and experience in, jointly working together to address this very problem. Thank you very much once again, Prof. We are very happy to have you on board, and we hope to work closely with you in respect of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we still have, there is someone again. Mr. Christopher.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello, sir.
Is that Mr. Who?
This is Garba Kikwashi Abdullah.
Are you back from where you went to? We have been calling you for more than...
Yes, the network is challenging me since, but I'm able to be stable now.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir, for the brilliant presentation. I think what I wanted to speak on has been, part of it has been, highlighted by the professor just now, who have spoken just now. Okay. Honestly speaking, what we, personally, what I noticed, some of these researches that are carried out on the climate change mitigation and other things like that does not involve the indigenous knowledge. I read several reports on the climate change, risk and other things, assessment like that. But you discover that what is really happening, what is on the ground, is different from what is reported from that research. So what I want to advise is, whoever wants to conduct a research, as a professor has rightly pointed out, let him go to the area he wants to conduct research, interact with the with the local communities and let you know how they're adapting locally to climate change. And secondly, sir, there are issues of this early sign warning. Sometimes people will conduct a research on early warning, submit to the policy, makers for implementation, but it will not be implemented until the hazard we're afraid of already, appears and people begin to suffer. They are very good in the response, you know, instead of prevention. We believe in rescue and other things like that. So I think we have to also sensitize the policymaker to please respect the researches conducted in early warning and implement them as quick as possible to prevent those risks, perceived. So I think these are the areas I want to also really contribute. Thank you very much, sir. And God bless you for that presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Garuba. We are highly honored by your contribution. I want to still believe we still have one or two more contributions to take before we go. Mr. Christopher, are you still there? I think you have the floor now if you want to add your voice to what the Prof has said and what Mr. Garuba Kikwashi has also said. So please, I can see that the hands are few now. I want to say that in the absence of any other question, I think we may have to call it a day so that we can meet again by 4 p.m. tomorrow for the concluding part of this all-important training on climate change and conflicts, strategies for mitigation and adaptation. Thank you very much once again for your time, all of you, and I wish you well, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much, sir. God bless you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate the lecture. It's amazing. Thank you
Can
very
you
much.
all hear me? Thank you very much.
Let's say wrong. What can I remember the? Oh, wow, that's a good one. And the name? Ah, okay, okay, it's true, it's true. They told him around there. And now a mother is not tall again. How are you guys? Hold on, his doctor buried them. How is family?
Wow. Ah,
Mm.
that's good.
Yeah, yes, yes. Yeah. I'm a lecturer, Federal Polytechnic.
Bro, thank you, okay.
Yeah, lecturing job was my dream. This thing. How is family? Okay, the dad, everyone is doing fine. Okay, that's interesting.
Are you still around?
Okay, I work also. Yeah, there's a World Bank project I'm working. I'm new map.
Okay, new map.
Uh, uh, okay, okay, okay. Wow, that's funny. That's nice. Yeah, I work there as well. I hope it's not tomorrow. Well done. So I work. One day, that day. Where are you? Oh, use which version? Adaptation. That's a good one. Counting or okay, what's the value? Wow, that's the best. Good one. Well done. Yeah, right. Okay. Regard. Oh, okay, things and things. Oh, yeah, that's even the way new map is talking to. See that this G line now, the first this is not good. Yes, 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 yes. That's it. Yeah. Regard to everyone, please. Guys, take care.
The one that they still want you. The one that is
Good evening.
Mario, I mean, hold on. Hold on. Yes, you're going to transfer everything. Now, put off on your make a petrol. I don't want to know. What about